1078 officer in need.
What's up, guys? It's Matt from the 1078 Project. Hey, if you're new to the organization, a little bit about us. The 1078 Project is a non-profit organization that's been founded and developed by law enforcement officers who have been involved in critical incidents and officer-involved shootings. Our goal at the 1078 Project is to provide mental, spiritual, and practical support to law enforcement officers as they navigate the difficult times surrounding an officer-involved shooting. With that being said, let's dive into today's episode, and I'll see you on the other side, boys. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the 1078 Project podcast. Today's guest is a current police sergeant. Prior to being a sergeant, he was in the Criminal Investigations Division, where he investigated crimes against persons, specifically crimes against children. Prior to working in St. Charles County, he started his career in North County. So he was a North County cop for a period of time before moving out to St. Charles County. I do want to warn you guys, there are some difficult components to this episode. We do talk about some crimes against children. I just want to warn you before we dive into the episode. With that being said, today's guest is Scott Pierce. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the 1078 Project podcast. Today's guest is Scott. What's happening, man?
Not much, dude. How are you?
I'm pretty good. I'm excited for the conversation today. It's weird sitting down talking to your former boss about things, but we'll see how that goes. So, as you know, you have a little bit of insight on the podcast. My goal is, before we define you as a policeman, is to define you as a human. So what I'd like to do is I like to start with your childhood. So did you grow up in St. Louis?
Oh, yeah. I was born and bred in North St. Louis County. And then Mom and Dad moved out here to St. Charles County right after my freshman year of high school. So
okay, so you spent most of your childhood in North St. Louis County.
Yeah,
Where at?
Bellefontaine Neighbors.
Oh.
So
yeah.
Deep North County.
Yeah, don't go back to Bellefontaine Neighbors. When I was working at the ATF, we did several search warrants in Bellefontaine Neighbors. Like most of them that we did were at Bellefontaine Neighbors.
Yeah, it's a little bit different of a community now.
Yeah. Did you go to private or public school?
I went to private school. I was born and raised in the Catholic faith, so we went to Catholic school, grade school, high school, all the way through high school.
I did too. I went to Good Shepherd.
Oh,
you were
St. Jerome.
Oh yeah, yeah, you were enemies. It's interesting how it seems like North County, like the Catholic schools everything ran through the school. Like, so all your sports ran through the school. Like everybody it was like picking your own favorite sports team.
Yeah, CYC was a big thing back in
huge.
the day, and every church had every neighborhood had its own Catholic church. Which is very different now. There's not as many parishes, but it was very different. Pretty cool.
What'd your dad do for a living?
So my dad was he was a maintenance supervisor at Aquinas Mercy High School for the Archdiocese.
Oh, really?
So he did that and contracted out any additional work, improvements, stuff like that he couldn't do himself. Okay. And then had a couple different employees that he managed and supervised.
Did your mom stay home or did she work? Or
Mom was home with us during the day while we were growing up. And then when I got two younger brothers, when all three of us were in school, she took a part-time job at a drugstore up the street from the house.
Okay. Yeah, that's how it was for me too. Growing up, my mom was at home. I wouldn't change it for the world. It was nice having mom.
No, you see all these families now where unfortunately both parents have to work because of how things are, and it really makes you grateful for it that you had your mom at home and you could stay home and play with your friends all day and run around the neighborhood and do all that kind of stuff, and you didn't have to go to a daycare or something like that.
Brothers, sisters?
Got two younger brothers.
You're the oldest?
I'm the oldest.
I
Yeah.
didn't know that. I thought your one brother was older than you.
No, there's two more younger brothers. We're almost 23 months apart to the day between each one of us.
Really?
So
they were on a time schedule.
It seemed like it. Yeah.
Get this one done. Get this one done. Get this one done. Growing up, CYC, what sports did you play?
I mainly played baseball growing up. That was my sport. My younger brother played soccer and baseball, but baseball was my thing, and we played sandlot ball every day with kids in the neighborhood down at St. Jerome. And then when I got into high school, I was kind of done with baseball at that point.
Okay. Where did you go to high school?
I went to Aquinas Mercy.
Okay. So your whole entire career was spent at Catholic school.
Yeah, up until college.
So was faith, I'm guessing, a big part of your guys' life growing up?
Yeah, it was. We had, obviously in school we had one class every day was a religion class where you learned about the Catholic faith, and we were in church for mass. one, sometimes two times a week. And then when I was growing up through 8th grade, I was also one of the mass servers at St. Jerome. So it was, I would say it took a fairly big part and role in my life growing up.
Were your parents pretty devout Catholics? If your dad worked for?
Dad was not Catholic. He didn't really practice, but he didn't keep mom and encouraged mom for us to grow up.
So your mom was Catholic?
Yeah, mom was Catholic. And dad would go with us when we would go as a family on Sunday mornings to church, even though dad wasn't raised Catholic, but he would still go and sit there unless he had to work or something like that. But he never kept us from that, or he was always supporting mom to do that.
Looking back, did you feel like did you carry your Catholic faith through your life?
I did. It was, I think faith and your religion is a very private thing. Mm-hmm. So, I'm not one that broadcasts it. I always keep it pretty internal to me. But it did, there was some rough times growing up through late in high school and college that, you kind of fall back on that.
Yeah. College, where'd you go to college?
So I started at Lindenwood University, and I had some issues with their financial aid office, and went and left there, went back to the community college and got my associate's degree, and then from there I went to the police academy.
What did you study?
Just business.
Just business. I wish I would have done that. I wish I would have got a business degree rather than like every dummy. I got a criminal justice degree. It's like I can't use it for anything other than.
At the time going in, coming out of high school, my personal goals were I wanted to get something maybe focus international business. I had these big dreams of maybe working overseas or something for a big company, like an Anheuser-Busch, or I wouldn't say a Microsoft because computers weren't my thing, but that kind of gives you an idea. And then it, best laid plans. We think we know everything when we're growing up, and then life hits you.
Do you remember the moment that you became interested in law enforcement?
I do. I had to take a criminology class at Lindenwood as a.
So you're a late bloomer.
Oh yeah. I had to take the criminology class as part of one of my one like your core classes. Prereqs. There you go. And the instructor was a retired policeman, and the project that we had to do for the semester was pick a topic in criminal justice and write about it and talk about how it could change or what could be better, or you could do a ride along with a couple different police officers on different shifts, write about that experience, and then write about how it changed your perception of policing. So I chose that because I figured that would be easier, and it was because I remember I did my first ride along with he's now Captain Lang. He was a sergeant, at O'Fallon, and that kind of set the hook. My cousin, her husband was a Chesterfield policeman at the time, so I had a lot of opportunity to ride with him, and it just that really kind of changed my mind on what I wanted to do.
What was it? Do you remember?
I liked the fact that nothing was the same. No 2 days were ever the same. I'm not one that can sit still for very long.
Yeah, me either.
So, like moving around, we get to be outside. Our office is a car right now, and we can roll a day like today. You can roll around with the windows down, and you get to interact with people, and you really can help people and make a difference for some people.
Yeah. Were there any like calls that caught you off guard when you were riding? Did you have like a hot call or anything that you're like, whoa?
No, not really. When I did quite a few ride-alongs in Chesterfield, and everything was pretty run-of-the-mill. Mm-hmm. The few ride-alongs I did in O'Fallon, there was, a few calls for fights, stuff like that, but, nothing that I ever really got to experience because I had to stay in the car.
What year was that?
2000, 2001. I'd say between 2000 and 2002-ish.
Okay. Would
be when the bulk of it was. Because I went to the academy in 2004, so.
Alrighty. Did you have any connections to law enforcement previously, like any family members, cops, or
no, first generation?
Dad served in the military or anything?
No. My dad's dad, both of my grandfathers did. My dad's dad served over in Europe during World War II. He went up. He was part of the Normandy invasion. And then Mom's grandpa was he served over right around the time the Korean conflict was going on. Okay. So that was really, and they didn't, they really didn't talk about it much. So I had no prior law enforcement in the family. I'm, first generation. So it was quite a shock to my family.
Yeah. Yeah. They didn't understand a lot of what cops did for a while in my career. They're kind of like caught off guard with like, you guys deal with that? Seriously?
Oh, totally.
They had zero understanding of what cops really do on a daily basis. So you switch over to criminal justice from the ride-alongs. What academy did you go to?
Eastern Missouri.
Okay. What'd you think about it?
It's a lot different than it is now. It was pretty. I didn't know what to expect going in. Right. This was this was new, and
you're like what, 22, 23?
21. Okay. I started when I was 21 and graduated when I was. I just turned 22 when I graduated. But it was pretty. There was a different director and training coordinator, and it was run very, very militaristic. It was very strict. And I think they were trying to overcome a reputation from prior leadership there. I would say that they'd overcome that. There was really not too many easy days when we were in there. Like some had told me it was going to be.
Yeah.
But we ran a lot, did a lot of push-ups. I can tell you that.
I forgot I had a question in my head that I was just going to ask you, and I just lost it. I'm sure I remember what it was. Yeah. Did you have was it going into law enforcement? Was that like your first real job you ever had? Did you work a job through college?
I had part-time jobs, through high school, through college. But yeah, this was when I got hired by Normandy in 2005. That was the first real full-time job, first adult job that I had.
It seems like I talked about this with Travis a couple weeks back, but it's like I remember having such limited life experience starting. Like I started when I was 20, and I had just turned 21 like a month before we graduated. I was like a 21-year-old kid with like zero life experience going into this job that's going to inundate you with so many different experiences. Was that pretty similar? Did you have?
In some ways, yeah. After high school, through college and stuff, I had to work to help pay for my college.
Yeah.
So I learned real quick, Mom and Dad we had a pretty good life growing up. My dad worked his ass off to give us the life we had so Mom could stay home. But I still had, when it came time to drive, the whole thing was if I wanted a car, you're going to have a job.
Yeah.
And you're going to have responsibilities. So I kind of had that life experience going for me coming into it. And then it just, when I got hired by Normandy, I remember my dad telling me that that's going to be good for you. And I didn't know at the time what he meant. And then you kind of see that, it kind of takes the rose-colored glasses off in a sense to see how other people live and what other dynamics are like in different households with different communities and things like that.
Yeah, I was exposed to a lot of that because I grew up really, really poor, so we didn't have a lot of money. So I lived in a really, really rough area and was exposed to crime at a pretty young age. I remember one of the major reasons why I got into law enforcement was I was probably like maybe second, third grade, and we lived in North St. Louis, and there was a home invasion, and the dude ended up in our backyard. So the whole St. Louis County SWAT team showed up to our house. And it was like the coolest thing ever. It was like an action movie just happened right in front of me. Like guys are jumping out of this big black truck, and they're like covered in black. They're wearing goggles, and they have guns. And I was like, oh my goodness. When I think back, there were like two experiences. That experience, and then a St. Louis County guy giving me Pop Rocks because I lived in, St. Louis County. It was always in the area because we lived in a pretty rough area.
Yeah, and we had some dealings with Bellefontaine Neighbors PD growing up. Nothing, I wouldn't say anything bad.
Yeah.
But, my mom and her brothers grew up in Bellefontaine Neighbors also, same neighborhood that we lived in. So a lot of the older officers at the time knew my mom and my uncles. So, once they kind of put the connection together that, the Pierce boys are actually nephews of the Pelker boys. Let's hope they're not like the Pelker boys and causing us grief. And they weren't troublemakers. They're just, boys will be boys. It's kind of one of those things. Yeah. But we had a couple officers that would sit when we played sandlot ball that would, they'd sit in their patrol car and drink their morning coffee, read the paper, watch us play baseball, and, things like that. When Bissell Hills and Bellefonte neighbors started to make that turn, we actually had an incident with some kids that wanted to come play ball with us, and we let them play. We repicked teams and stuff, and it turned into they didn't like the way that we played, and it was going down the road of turning into a brawl on the ball field. And I don't know his name. This officer, I remember him. He when we played down on the ball fields, he would sit up on the school blacktop, and I guess he saw what was coming, because we noticed the car was gone. The next thing we know, here he is come walking up along the tennis court to where the ball field was, and he kind of put a stop to it and kind of told the people that weren't part of the group, like, look, I watch these boys play ball every day. They don't. I know you're lying. You need to get on your way and essentially get to your side of 367 and be done with it.
Just the difference in like North County from. It's not even that long ago, like 20, 30 years ago, to now is insane.
Yeah, and I would say it's in pockets too. My mom still lives over in Hazelwood, and then
Hazelwood was always like super nice.
And there's still parts of that community over there that are still like they were when we were growing up. It's just they're getting smaller.
Ferguson has always been a really nice area. Like when I grew up, we used to go over to Ferguson and Florissant to shop.
Yeah,
because it was like the nicer area. And still, there's still a lot of really, really nice older homes where that's where that was their starter home, and that's also going to be their finisher home,
right? And
they've been living there for 50, 60 years. But it's just weird to see how much North County has changed over the last 30 years. Because it wasn't, like a perfect example is like the Dellwood Sports Complex. Did you guys ever play soccer there?
Yeah, my younger brother used to play there, and then in high school we had an intramural and indoor league, and that's where it was at. Was at Dellwood.
We used to play there all the time. Like back in the day when the turf was like that real like you
Paper
got
thin.
strawberries every time you fell down. They just redid the whole thing. I've seen pictures of the inside of it. I can't remember the company name, but one of my dad's friends owns a engineering company, and they redid the entire complex.
Cool.
And they put like pickleball courts in there, like a big track, a bunch of basketball courts and stuff. It looks really, really nice. But man, I spent so many days at Dellwood Sports Complex, and I seen a picture of it like 5-6 years ago, and I was like, broke my heart.
See, and this
like
goes
all
back.
ran
Like
down.
this is probably before you, but when I was growing up, we obviously know about the DARE program now. Well, they used to do a thing. They were DARE dances.
Dare dances.
And that was at Dellwood Sports Complex.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Did you go?
On the field. I went to like one or two of them, yeah.
Look at you. Going through the academy, is there anything that stands out to you? Like, did you get smoked at all? Did they make you run? Did you do anything
we ran a lot, man. You talk to my mom or any of my family, they'll tell you I was the good kid of the three of us.
Really?
So, I never had a problem with grades in school. The academic aspect of things was kind of my strong suit. So I really didn't get in trouble. Part of the reason was I was like, man, I have to establish my reputation now to get a job somewhere. Yeah. So
it was so competitive back then.
Oh yeah. We had 38 people in our academy class, and I remember there was like 3 testing dates for that class.
Really?
And then they still washed 3 out before we graduated with 35.
Really?
But you'd go for jobs, and you're 2 or 3 job openings, and you're going up against 150 people for 3 jobs.
Yeah, I remember it. It used to be like, don't ever expect as a new guy that you're going to get a job in St. Charles County.
Yeah, and you still
always
try.
going to start in St. Louis.
Yes, you still try. I unfortunately I didn't get hired out here to start my career, but I would.
Did you apply at all?
Yeah. There wasn't too many. I think maybe St. Charles City at that time was one of the only places that really wanted experience out here. O'Fallon at the time had a college credit requirement, which I had, but I didn't get through the process.
It was like 30 or 60 hours or something like that.
I think it was 60. I think it was, yeah, that sounds right.
I think it was 60 because
Yeah,
that's
I
what
think
it
it
was
was
when I
60.
went through too.
And then it dropped to 30, and now we've done away with it.
Yeah, the recruiting standards have. That's a whole nother topic, man.
Yeah.
But I sent Montana when I was podcasting with him. I told him about that video from Detroit where the lady's like, "We'll take care of your municipal warrants."
I remember talking about you at work that one night. Yeah,
dude,
talking
it
about
blew
that.
my mind, and like everybody thinks I'm lying. Everybody's no, there's no way. So I sent him the video the other day. Yeah, I found it on the internet. I spent like way too long looking for it. I ended up finding it and sending it to him, but it just blows my mind that that's where law enforcement has went in a matter of since I've been in.
Well, yeah,
years.
nobody wants to be the police anymore. I mean, it's unfortunately a lot of it I think is media driven.
Oh yeah, 100%.
But it's it's just something we're fighting, and everybody around the country's fighting it. And I would imagine it's the same way internationally too. But
I think we've just become like political pawns.
Oh, totally.
I think we have become like
totally
the upfront representation of a government, whether we agree with it or don't agree with it. Like you're the only person that the public can get in front of and scream at and treat terrible. So now you're who's gonna get it.
Exactly. We're the arm of the government that is the closest to the people.
Yeah. The front line gets it worse, the worst, But and I don't blame guys for not getting into this job anymore. Although the pay has come up, still the pay everywhere has went up. So you're still not making astronomical amount of money. And when I was young, man, we looked at cops like they were superheroes.
Yeah, we never. My brothers and the kids we played with in the neighborhood, we were boys will be boys, right? We did stupid stuff, but we never did anything where we had any real major run-ins with the Bellefonte Neighbors PD, or even when we came out here, my brothers kind of had some run-ins with O'Fallon, but I mean, it nothing like you see now on the news. It was your typical, I guess what you would classify as suburban crime.
Yeah.
But yeah, we, you always, when you're a kid, you drive down the road and you see a police officer pulled over, they got the red and blues on, and you think, you look, right? You watch. And I think looking back on how I was growing up with going to school and my grades and some of the different things of characteristics about myself that I found growing up, like you can speak to this as my OCD and my structuredness, it makes sense that this is where I am.
I wish I had a little bit more of that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. I wish I had a little bit more, with the nonprofit, surprisingly, I'm super structured and I'm super OCD about everything.
No, you've done, I remember when you told me you were going to do this, and you've done a fantastic job, man. I'm proud of you. I've seen you, you're one of the few people I think you've worked with or for me since the day I got promoted. So
I think so, yeah.
I've seen, even though you've been around a little bit, you see growth in people. And I think that's one of the coolest parts of my job now is seeing the growth and advancement in people. And we've hired a couple people on our shift that I've seen come in as a green right out of the academy to where he is now 2.5 years later. And it's been kind of neat to see that progression.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Adam's a maturity level and just overall understanding of the world has it's night and day.
Yeah, we talked about taking off the rose-colored glasses, and I think that was...
Yeah, I think he definitely experienced that for sure. Yeah. It's just weird to me. I don't know, maybe it's because this is my own thing and I'm super passionate about it, but it seems a lot easier on the public side of things rather than the government side of things to keep everything in order for me, at least. I don't know. Maybe it's just because I'm passionate about it.
I think that has a lot to do with it. You look at people, and I think that's in all walks of life, in any career, right? If it's something you love doing and you're passionate about, you're going to, whether you realize it or not, you put more effort into it and you put more of yourself into it. So, I mean, it doesn't surprise me at all that this is something that what you've done with this project.
It's pretty neat, man. I'm pretty excited about it. Did any of your other brothers Anybody else going to law enforcement? You the only one?
No. My younger brother, Nick, is he's now a assistant superintendent, I think, for McCarthy Construction in their solar division. So he travels. He's down in Texas right now. And then my youngest
Is it
brother.
McCarthy who built the police department?
Maybe.
I think it is.
I think so.
I think that is who built it.
That was long before he was with McCarthy. Prior to that, he was a concrete finisher. So he started out as a laborer and then worked his way up to finisher. And then he just got sick of not having work in the wintertime and going through all that. And then my youngest brother is a carpenter. He works with his essentially his brother-in-law as his own company. It's the two of them. He's been doing that since high school. So they kind of got in the construction trade, which in some ways kind of followed Dad's footsteps.
Yeah.
I remember growing up, Dad studying for his HVAC certifications, all his electrician certifications, and plumbing. I mean, you name it, he did all that to better himself so he could do more in his role with the Archdiocese of Aquinas. So,
Yeah. If there's one thing about your dad that you took away as like the biggest thing that you took away from your dad, it could be like a personal character, or it could be work ethic, it could be anything.
it's probably work ethic. Dad, like I said, my dad worked a lot growing up. I bowled growing up, so junior leagues was on Saturday mornings. And I had plenty of kids that I bowled with that their mom or dad was there. And, Dad wasn't because he was working. Mom was busy running me to the bowling alley. Then my younger brother to his soccer game. She used to joke she just went up and down 270 on Saturday mornings and afternoons. So, I think I got a lot of that from my dad. Would I have loved for him to have been there more? Yeah. He was there. If I bowled a tournament and I made the cut on Sundays, he typically would come on Sundays, and he would watch. So, he was there for that. I was fortunate he was there the first, we had a season-long tournament that he was there for the day. That was the first one that I ever won. I think I was like 14 years old. I don't think I was even old enough to drive yet. So he was there for that, which was cool. And then as I got older, we bowled in a couple summer leagues together.
Where'd the bowling come from? Your dad?
Yeah, dad, mom. Dad bowled 2 nights a week, and then mom bowled one. And then as my brothers started coming, Dad cut back to one, and mom bowled one. So
you just so baseball and bowling were your two things.
Yeah.
And did you bowl through high school and everything?
Yeah, I still do. We didn't have a team or anything for bowling in high school, so it was always kind of my own thing that I did.
Are there like collegiate scholarships you can get for bowling?
Yeah.
So they just colleges
absolutely.
that have
College
bowling
bowling's
teams?
really big right now.
Really?
There's the women's side of things is an NCAA sport. It's an NCAA recognized sport. The men's side hasn't gotten to that level yet. I don't know if it will, but yeah, it's a big deal, man. There's a lot. Nobody realizes that how much there is in the sport and in the game, or how technical it can get.
Yeah, dude, I have no understanding at all. I told you this 1,000
yeah.
times. I just throw the ball as hard as I can down the lane, hoping it knocks down as many pins as I can get.
Right. Yeah, and I think, and even some people at work, I tell them I'm going out of town. Like this weekend, I'll be going for a tournament, and we talk about it. And like I tell them just a little bit and try to be as.
Are you going to Vegas again?
No, we're going down to Springfield, Missouri. But I try to tell them just very baseline stuff, and they just look at me like I never realized it was that involved. And I was like, man, I could sit here for hours. And
You tried to explain the inside of a ball to me one time, and
I fried your brain.
I got lost for about 45 minutes.
Yeah, I thought you were gonna have to plug your ears up, keep it from leaking out.
Yeah. I didn't know bowling started that early for you. I didn't know that you had been doing it for that long.
Yeah, so I, the deal was growing up, as long as I had my homework done and I behaved myself, when we got done eating dinner, when Dad left to go bowl at his league, I could go with him, and same with Mom. When Mom got done, I could go with her. And, all these other kids would be running to the game room to play in the game room while I was sitting right there watching Mom or Dad bowl. At the time you were keeping score, there was no automatic scoring, was few and far between.
Yeah.
So Dad's league in particular, like I'd be down at the score table keeping score. So, in second, third grade, I'm already able to do some much higher level adding and multiplying and stuff like that.
Just from
because
bowling.
of that. Yeah. And I think that helped me out in school going forward, knowing how to do that kind of stuff. So yeah, I love the sport. I still to this day love it. When I got hurt a couple years ago, They told me that I may never bowl again. And it took every ounce of energy I had to get out of the office before I just started sobbing.
Yeah.
I remember Derek Myers called me after I had left the doctor. He knew I was going to get checked out, and he was the first person I talked to, and I had kind of composed myself for about 5 seconds to answer the phone. And he asked me how I was, and the first thing out of my mouth was, "I'm never going to bowl again." And I'm just like bawling on the phone. But I love the sport. It's always been a part of my life. It probably always will be. I see some of these guys that are in their late 60s and 70s still out there doing it and having fun. It's like, oh, God, I hope I can do that when I'm 70 years old.
I guess that's a benefit of a sport like bowling or golf. Like you could still do it when you're 60 years old.
Right.
It doesn't require, like, you shouldn't be doing like judo or jiu-jitsu at 60. There's guys that do it.
If you can, good on you.
There's guys that do it and that pull it off, but it's few and far between because the injury, you get so many injuries doing jiu-jitsu, or a lot in judo too because there's so many throws. But maybe I need to pick up something that I'll be able to carry off into my retirement years. I don't know. I just don't have the patience for sports that require so much finesse.
Well, it requires a lot of brain power too. So.
Yeah. I'm operating on limited power, dude.
That's not true.
So you go through the academy. How'd you do, like, overall?
I was in the top. I was in the top third. I know. I don't remember my exact rank. But I think overall, I want to say, like, I think my final percentage GPA average was like 90, 94, 95%. Like I said, academically, I did real well because that was kind of good for me. Anyway, that was the best shape of my life I was ever in. So I would love to go back to the academy just to get back in that good a shape again. I didn't do terrible. I think what I was most concerned about getting through was the firearms portion and qualifying. I had never shot a handgun until I went to the academy.
No way.
Yeah. I mean, I had, growing up, we had, my grandma and grandpa had 140 acres down in Fredericktown. Mm-hmm. So, we'd been through hunter education and we had been out hunting with our uncles and, I'd shot in rifles and shotguns and stuff like that. So I knew how to do that. But man, when they put something that big in your hands, it's a lot different.
A lot of instructors say it's easier to teach that guy how to shoot than it is somebody that's been shooting for their whole life. Because you don't have to.
You don't have any habits.
Yeah.
I can see that.
Slate, they can teach you the exact way that they want you to shoot, and they don't have to try and overcome any issues. So did you end up doing fairly well in the firearms?
Qualified. I wasn't top shot or anything, but I mean, I went to the academy with. I'm sure you remember Rusty Connor, who used to work with us. Mm-hmm. Rusty and I, when I got out of the academy, Rusty and I kept in touch. After I got out of the academy, when I got hired at Normandy, him and I at least once a month would go down to Bullseye off Manchester Road.
Did he start at O'Fallon?
Yeah.
He did.
Yeah, he was
like a former Marine or something too, wasn't he?
No, he was in the Army. He was a Ranger for O'Fallon, and then he went to the academy because they were commissioning the Rangers at the time.
One of my first ever resistings was Rusty Connor and Rick DeWitt. They were a combined age of 112.
Thank God you had Rusty with you.
Yeah. At the time of that resisting, I'm not joking, I think both of them were like mid to late 50s, and I was like 21 years old. Rusty is smoking 7 packs of cigarettes a day. DeWitt smoking.
Yeah, and you say those two people, and you talk about two stark differences in personality.
Yeah, they're completely opposite. That was my first resisting, was with those two. I was like, uh-oh, this is going to go bad. Yeah, but no, both really good dudes. Rusty, I think how long has he been retired? It's been a while.
Russ has been gone for probably close to 10 years now.
Yeah, it has to be somewhere around there.
Because he retired before I went into the Bureau, and that was in 2013. So it's probably been close to 12 years, probably.
I think so. It has to be somewhere around there. So you get out of the academy and you get a job at Normandy. Mm-hmm. Normandy, for people that aren't familiar with the St. Louis area, is in St. Louis County. Like, I consider that North County, right?
Yeah, it's North County. It's more, if you were to look at it on a map, is probably more central than anything. because it's right there along that 70 corridor. We were a mile from St. Louis city limits. When I was there, we had a population of about 5,000 people.
That's it?
Yeah. And
How big is it?
I
I guess a couple square miles or something?
think it's like 5 square miles, but the bulk of that is UMSL's South Campus, Glen Echo Country Club, and then St. Peter's Cemetery off of Lucas and Hunt. So,
Did UMSL have that other campus? Did they have their own police department?
yeah, they had their own PD that we would every once in a while we would go assist them on something, or they would assist us if they were in the area.
So it's about 5 square miles. You said how many people?
About 5,000.
5,000. How many guys when you first started? How many guys you guys have working?
I think it was
at a time?
22 from top to bottom. Oh, for
22
the
whole
department. For the whole department, yeah. Working a shift the most you would usually have working a shift would be 4. It'd be a sergeant and 3 officers.
Okay.
And then towards the end of my time there, it was where you'd maybe have 1 or 2 additional cars. We had by the time I had left there, we had a couple K9 guys. We had grown a little bit to where we had a neighborhood response team, which is kind of like a special ops type thing. So
Okay. Do you remember your first hot call? Like the first call you were like, I'm the police now?
Yeah, I'd been there for a little bit. It was in the summer. We got a call for a shooting at the corner of Ellington and Holborn. And when I turned down Ellington from Bermuda, you could still hear them shooting at each other. So, I was, driving down the street, and, I remember unbuckling my seatbelt, leaning over and drawing my pistol. And I remember going down the street, and I, said Our Father and a Hail Mary, because there's a good chance I might meet my maker coming around the corner. But, you get that pucker factor real quick. By the time, I guess the way that Ellington and Holborn was set up, you were coming downhill. So once you crested the hill, they could see you, and they just, everybody scattered. And, by the time I got, out of the car and down there, they had a good probably 5-6 second head start to get running. And once they run down Holborn, there's no idea. You have no idea which way they went at that point.
Yeah. Did anybody get hit?
Yeah, we had one dude that got hit in the ass.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was laying in the backyard. He tried to run too, because he had warrants. And
Like that Forrest Gump thing.
Yeah.
Something bit
Bit
me. Yeah, that's a pretty hot first call, dude. Describe how violent was Normandy when you first started? That was still like 2000s.
So I was
just
there
starting to get to the point where
I was there from 05 to 08. We had our fair share of violent calls, but for the most part, the community itself, Normandy wasn't as bad as people thought it was. Mm-hmm. Somehow it became the turf war between the little teenage gangs from Berkeley and Ferguson that Bermuda Elementary was like where all their fights and stuff. So we would get calls there for fights. Everyone, you got in the summertime, you'd go to at least 1 or 2 shots fired calls every shift.
Legit shot fires.
Oh yeah. I mean, I remember one night sitting up at Public Works, sitting with one of the other officers I worked with. It's like 2:33 in the morning. It's a mid-June, so it's not hot and humid yet. You can still have the windows of your patrol car down and not worry about sweating your ass off. Mm-hmm. And we're sitting there, and all of a sudden you just hear a pop, 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 pow. And I remember we looked at each other like, boy, that's going to be a bad day for somebody. And then the tone went off, and it was all Jennings units respond to I think it was off of Jennings Station Road. Some guy had walked up and just unloaded on this house, killed 2 people with an assault rifle.
Really?
Yeah. So I mean that was in Jennings, but we would have
but their mutual aid, like you guys all worked pretty close together. At
yeah,
least they do now.
And
so
it was like that.
major
Yeah,
pops
something
off.
like that. We didn't. At the time when I was there, something like that. Unless Jennings would have called for you, we weren't going. We would kind of move east that way, but there's many times Jennings called out shots fired at them that we responded over there. So we stuff like that. We had our fair share of shots fired calls, your fights, get an armed robbery every now and then, because the South UMSL Metrolink platform, that whole thing was in Normandy on the South Campus. The Metrolink division from with county and city PD would handle anything that happened on the train. Sometimes they would handle stuff on the platform, but if anything happened in the parking lot, it was us. So, I mean, we get calls there for, robberies, stuff like that. I remember one night we had, was me, my sergeant, and one other person, and before midnight we had a home invasion, a shooting, a robbery, and then a second robbery on the north end of town.
And there was 4 people working?
There was 3 of us.
3 people working.
Yeah. 2 of them came out and only 2 of them came out at the same time.
Man,
So we were sending one person to deal with the home invasion and then one person to deal with a shooting. And St. Louis County's 2nd precinct would hear something, they would come help us. Bell Ridge were right next to us. They were on County Seconds radio. We had a good relationship with them too. So we had help when we needed it. It was way different over there than it is out here, man. It's getting better out here, but like out here, it seems like every agency's on their own little island, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
And
nobody plays very well.
Yeah,
it's not that there's animosity there, but it's just like, this is yours, so
yes,
deal with your stuff.
Correct. And you helped everybody out over there. That's just how it was. And each agency handled the reporting and investigative aspect, that you had to. But I would say most of the big violent calls that I went on in Normandy, with the exception of like 2, happened in a neighboring venue.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Is there? You said you're there from 2005 to 2008.
Mm-hmm.
Is there one call that stands out in your mind that's like, this sums up my entire career at Normandy?
Not that I can remember. Like I said, we had our community supported us when I was there. We had, the city did. We had a few houses that we dealt with on a regular basis that no matter what you do, they're going to hate you and they're going to, but by and large, we didn't have too much of a problem with the community, other than, a few houses here and there. We had a couple houses that we dealt with like the same person all the time because, I remember this one resident, she had some pretty severe mental health issues, which, you're talking 19 years ago now. It wasn't as, people weren't aware of it as much. Right. So, we would go to her house fairly regularly for, things that she thought was going on. I'll never forget the one time, I think probably one of the calls that stands out is she called us because there was bats in her home, right? It's like, okay, yeah, there's bats in your home, Miss Head. I'm sure, because Amethyst Head was her name. And I remember going to the front door and knocking on the door. And she opened the door, and sure enough, like 4 bats flew out of the front door. Oh, no. And I about hit the deck. And she looked, she's like, I don't need you anymore. And just shut the door and turned around and went back inside. But I enjoyed my time over there. I learned a lot. Did a lot of good police work in a short amount of time. But I had more ambitions for my career, and it just.
What were your ambitions? Like, going into law enforcement, did you have like a specific outline of, hey, this is what I want to do and this is why I want to do it? Or
I knew I didn't want to be just a patrolman.
Mm-hmm.
At Normandy, I kind of had some desire to be a canine guy.
In a past life, dude, you almost chose it.
And that was, I would say that was, the chief at the time, when we were getting our own canine, there was no process for it. It was given to someone.
They just picked somebody.
Yeah, and the officer that got it deserved it. He worked hard. He had more seniority than me. He deserved it, and he did a phenomenal job as a canine guy. But it would have been nice to have been considered for it, or at least asked.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of pushed me that I realized that, man, I like it over here and I love the people I work with, but long term for my career, what's going to fulfill me, I'm going to need more opportunity. So that's what pushed me to start looking. And I really had it narrowed down to about 3 places that I would go to. Mm-hmm. And those were the only 3 places that when they would post an opening that I would apply to.
Otherwise you just were content to
I was happy there, man. It was, I made decent money for where I worked compared to other agencies. Mm-hmm. There was no, it was just, man, at the time, the people that were there, it really was a good department to be at. Everybody got along, and or at least could work with one another. You know, a lot of us would hang out outside of work together. It was really a good place to go.
I think that was what separated for a long time. What separated St. Louis County Police Departments from St. Charles County Police Departments was the camaraderie, not just between individuals at departments, but because they work so closely together with like a neighboring department, like their whole shifts would go out together and they would hang out and stuff. And you really did, even now, you really don't see that as much in.
No, you don't. And over there at the time, a lot of those agencies, you know, 12-hour shifts are relatively new to St. Charles County.
Were they on 12s back then?
Yeah. When I was in Normandy, we worked 12s.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And then when I came here, we were on 10s at O'Fallon. You know, I'd never worked anything else.
The best, dude.
You know,
that shift is the bomb.
10s?
Yes.
Man,
I loved it.
You know, I liked it at first because it was something different than 12s. And then I'll be honest, after being on them for a little while, I was like, I didn't like them.
Why not?
It was too fluid. You know, 12s, I know what my days off are. I know what time I go to work. I can plan stuff several months in advance without having and knowing how much vacation time am I going to need to take, you know, stuff like that.
That is the nice thing about 12s is I can plan something 7 months in advance and know my days off.
Yeah, it's a long night sometimes or a long day, but it is what it is. And the thing I like about it is the way that we do things at O'Fallon. You know, I can take 12 hours a time and be gone for 7 days. As opposed to on 10s, man, if you wanted that amount of time, you're probably burning at least 40 hours a time to be gone for an entire week.
The 1078 Project podcast is proudly sponsored by Deemed Fit. Deemed Fit is an activewear and a leisure company created for first responders. Be a part of their movement to instill confidence, motivation, and a willingness to keep pushing forward. Deemed Fit is a first responder-owned company looking to help first responders and their friends stay as physically and mentally fit as possible. Stay Deemed Fit. So what was some of the, like, moving from Normandy to O'Fallon, what were, like, some of the big differences?
Call volume?
Because O'Fallon was pretty small still then, though. It was like
compared to what we are
like,
now, yeah.
You know, there'd be times that, at least when I started in 2012, that we'd be working with like 6 people some nights.
So when I started, it was minimum staffing was 8. One boss sometimes. We would work with 7 a lot of times. Call volume was the biggest thing. Just the size of the department was weird. It took me a little bit because it was strange coming to work and not working with the same people every night, you know. And I just, man, for the first few months, I kind of kept to myself and sat in the back table of the roll call room and just kind of watched and seen what people were about. And just the size, you know, I was so used to, you know, the whole city of Normandy is like the size of one sector.
Yeah. O'Fallon's a big city.
So I think those were probably my biggest adjustments was just the call volume and learning my way around.
Busier or less busy?
It was less busy compared to Normandy. And then the stuff when we would get busy, it was stuff that I was like,
why are we
this is not what I want. This is not what I thought I was getting into.
Yeah. Moving from Normandy to O'Fallon, did you have like, okay, well, this is what I want to do? Like, did you have something that you were set on doing?
So
like I knew you wanted your career to move.
I knew the department had more. There was going to be more opportunity there, right? Mm-hmm. I hadn't really. I guess I was there for about 3 years, and Derek Myers was a sergeant at the time, and he was the sergeant that I was assigned to when I went to Midnights, and he is the first supervisor at O'Fallon that ever came to me and asked me, you know, what do you want to do?
Yeah, he's one of the best.
Where do you see yourself? And I think that was when I really put some serious thought into it about what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go. And I kind of remember talking to him about, you know, the bureau thing and the crisis negotiation thing was just really kind of starting. And I remember him coming to me and asking me if I'd be interested in that. He goes, man, you're really good at listening to people and talking to people. I think that would be and I was like, I think I'd rather do the bureau, man. And he's like, okay. And that was the end of it. And, I started, he helped me look for trainings that were more investigative based and put me in positions to do work with the Bureau. We had a couple cases that normally Bureau gets them. And, he went to the lieutenant at the time, was Nesky, and said, hey, I think Scott this would be a good one for him to run with. He wants to be back here. And, so he gave me those opportunities and put me in those positions to get where I wanted to be.
What drove you towards the investigative side of law enforcement? Because me, dude. I become obsessive about
There's
something.
a detective in you, though, bro. There's a detective in there, too.
It just takes me being interested in something to really, give it a bunch of thought and effort. But it just has never intrigued me. I've always been the run and gun type of dude.
I think the why, the finding out why, and putting things together. I think that's what kind of drove me to it. And it was, I was kind of at that point when I remember when I put in for it the first time, I put in for the Bureau thinking and pretty much knowing I'm probably not going to get it this time. I was going up against dudes like, Matt Wolf, and people of that have been there a while, that caliber. And, I didn't get it. Matt ended up getting it, and I knew that. But I remember asking Nesky a couple days after the decision was made, hey, what do I need to do? Or what could I have done better? And, I'm looking for a 5-minute answer, and it turned into a 30-minute conversation after I got off midnights up in his office with, this is what you're doing that we like. Keep doing this. Maybe look for this type of training. Your time's going to come. Just follow this path. So, the finding out why was really kind of intrigued me, and it was different from Troy. I wanted to see something from a different avenue.
What year around? So you've been in, I guess, 6 years of law enforcement experience when you started getting intrigued in investigative stuff?
Yeah, I'd say it was about 6 years. Mm-hmm.
I think that makes sense. I think because you do kind of transition for the first 5 years, you're kind of just
learning the
hold
job
on for dear life, trying to learn.
Yeah, you're learning the job.
Yeah, okay, well, I have how to write a fraud down. Mm-hmm. Now I need to move to how to write,
right.
Well, no, Fallon, you start out with vast majority of CITs and domestics, but
sure,
you figure out how to do those things now. Let me figure out how to do a fraud, and let me figure out so the first 5 years you just spend trying to learn how to be a policeman, and then after 5 years, I think is kind of probably when you transfer over to okay, well, I figured out how to be a cop. Now, what kind of cop do I really want to be? For me, it was dog all the way. I wanted a dog.
It fits you. That fits your personality.
Yeah, I always wanted to handle a dog, and luckily I've had the opportunity to handle 2 now. But so what were some of the things that he told you that he wanted to see from you? Was it specific trainings that he wanted you to go to, or
not so much what trainings he wanted to see me go to, just recommendations. A lot of the biggest thing that Nesky that he told me that day is investigate all your cases that you can. Mm-hmm. If it's something you don't feel you can or you need help with, don't be afraid to come up here and talk to any of these guys or gals back here, and that will help you, and get in the interview room. Because that's one of the big things up here is interviewing people.
Oh, I love interviewing people, dude.
Yeah.
So, that's one of the things I really like doing, sitting down and talking to people.
Yeah, so it wasn't so much I would say that conversation wasn't so much as of a roadmap conversation like the one I had with Derek, mm-hmm. but it was definitely hey, you're doing the right things and you're on the right track. Just keep doing it, but maybe focus here.
What's a couple pieces of advice that you may give to a young guy, a guy that's 4 or 5 years into law enforcement that wants to move down the investigative road? If you go back and tell young Scott Pierce 5-6 years into his career, what would you tell him?
Investigate everything. Don't just kick it to the Bureau. Get up with your detectives and talk to them to learn how to do things, learn some different techniques, interview as many people as you can, and training's big. There's a lot of good detective type schools out there. One of them I teach now, that you learn how to investigate a case, and you actually investigate a scenario where we have role players come in that know these roles and know the fact pattern, that it's not, how role playing is in law enforcement. Mm-hmm. Nobody takes it seriously, right? Well, these people come in and they don't know these people. that are in the training. You know, if they do know them, they know them in a completely different role. And then when they sit down in front of them and they're like, well, tell us about this. And they look at them and say, go pound sand. That's not usually how role playing goes in training. Right. So we try to make it as realistic as we can. And like, those are the types of cases or classes that I would recommend.
Did you go to like Reed's or anything?
I went to Reed and Wicklander. At the time they were both offered concurrently with each other. And then a lot of the stuff was, you know, stuff that my supervisors, when I got back to the Bureau, recommended, you know, and stuff that I would kind of seek out.
Is Reed's as profound as everybody says it is?
It's good.
It's like you always hear everybody say,
yeah, it's good. It's good. I'm not gonna say it's bad or it's not worth time. It is good. But a lot of that stuff is just like anything else. I'm sure it's the same with K9. They can tell you how to do something, and they can teach you a way to do something. You have to learn how am I going to make this work for me?
Yeah.
And how am I going to accomplish the goals that I need to accomplish with these? You know, it's just a tool for your tool belt.
That's sometimes what I struggle with a little bit from like training is that it seems like a lot of trainings are very cookie cutter approach to everything. Like, you know, defensive tactics. Like I'm a DT instructor, and for a long time with like PPCT and ASP and all these other trainings. Now with Jiu-Jitsu for law enforcement, it's a little bit different, but it was like a very cookie cutter approach. Like, this is the way you taught the class. You taught the class the exact same for every single person, and they're just supposed to learn these things and then move on and use them in the real world. And like, I don't think, and it's probably the same for investigative training, there's no one size fits all. There's no cookie cutter approach. No. You know, we have guys that work at our police department and girls that work at our police department that are 110 pounds, and guys that work at our police department that are 350 pounds. Like, I can't teach the person that's 110 pounds the same technique that I would teach the person that's 350 pounds. Like, they're not going to be able to do the same things. So I think maybe that's what you're hinting at with investigative stuff, is like, you just kind of got to get in the game.
Yeah,
you know,
you do. And you learn by doing, right? I mean, you know, there's looking back, you know, when I was on the road, kind of when I would start investigating stuff a little bit, I'm sure looking back, there were some cases that didn't get charges issued or never got to that point that that should have, or I could have gotten to that point had maybe I went and asked the right question, or went and maybe sought some advice from somebody that had been doing it regularly. But, you know, I always learn more by doing it.
Yeah.
And I kind of did my best to, if it was something I felt that like was out of my league or out of something I couldn't handle or that needed to get to a certain point, like I made sure to get somebody involved to help me out that needed to. But, you know, that's how you learn.
In the first, I guess, 3-4 years at O'Fallon, were there any calls that stood out to you that was like, was there any big calls that you're like, oh, like if you thought about that time frame that was a call that popped in your head? Like for Montana, when we just talked, it was like the charter guy. I think you were on that call too.
I was off that night. I took off that night. I was supposed to work that night. That was actually would have been my sector had I been working that night.
It's quite the report to write.
I would say something. I remember the first 3 to 5 since I was here. Probably we had a case where a father smothered a baby. I think Ryan Van Wave was the first one on scene for that, and then I think I was second or third. And then we
purposely or on accident.
That's just how long it took me to get there.
No, I'm saying like he smothered the baby on purpose.
Yeah, the baby. Yeah, it was on purpose. I don't think he intended to kill the baby.
Just to shut it.
The baby was crying to get it quiet, and you know, so that one, I would say most 3-5 years are cases like that. I mean, we had that one. There was just one I just forgot that. We had the autistic boy that they found in the cage in the basement, kid in the cage case.
That's an insane
wasn't on scene on that one because that one tied up quite a few people. So there was somebody.
That's a gnarly case. That happened right before I started at
O'Fallon. Somebody had to work. Somebody had to answer the other calls. I would say that one with the kid was probably the biggest one, but there was nothing that I mean, it was we weren't as busy when I first started out here as we are now.
I'm guessing that was probably 2010, 2011 time frame, somewhere around there.
9 or 10, because I
So-
went to midnights in 11.
For like a kid case like that, or even any major case, were there any resources that were provided? Like even at Normandy, did you guys do any critical incident debriefs for any major calls, or were there any resources that were provided to you guys? Because I feel like those were the years where cops were just expected just to shut up and do their job.
So the biggest incident we had at Normandy didn't even really involve anything that happened while we were working. We had our SRO, Amanda Cates, was shot and killed by her boyfriend.
Oh, really?
I was working secondary the night that happened, and then
Did she live in Normandy?
no, she lived down in, I think, Festus, Crystal City area. It turned out it was a domestic situation. We kind of, I don't remember any counselors being brought in for us. We were certainly told if we needed it that they would find one and get us one.
Mm-hmm.
But we really kind of banded together as a department on that one and stuck together and helped each other through it. And at the time, I'm 6-8 months into law enforcement, and this is happening.
Mm-hmm.
So, we kind of leaned on each other a lot for that, and talked to each other. But I don't remember a counselor coming in, and I never went and talked to one. I knew Amanda. I wasn't as close to her as other officers were because I was so new. But
Yeah.
everybody knew Amanda, and Amanda was a friend to everybody in that department.
Thanks for hanging in there through the episode, guys. As you can tell, there's more to this guest. If you're interested in Scott's story and you want to hear more from him, hang in until next week, and here's a sneak peek from next week's episode.
Then all the other stuff, the other hurdles and additional stuff that came with that case, along with the other one, you just kind of try, you just put your head down and drive forward.
Yeah.
So
You just bury it.
yeah, you have to learn. In some ways, you have to learn to flip the switch when you leave work, and try to leave as much as you can at work.
Mm-hmm. I think it's nearly impossible to do it in cases like that.
Yeah,
There's a couple
it
cases
is.
in my mind that you just can't leave at work. Officer-involved shootings. It's very difficult to be able to just leave it at work and not realize that something really bad could have happened to you. And kid cases.
Yeah, I felt like, in the 5.5 years or whatever I did them, other than that one, and even with that case, I felt like I did a fairly decent job at flipping the switch. It wasn't till much later. I remember the day. I remember being at the courthouse the last day of the trial.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, I had to leave to come back to work. I didn't get to stay for the verdict to be delivered. But I remember when my victim advocate called me to tell me what the verdict was. I remember I had to pull off of Salt River Road, I'm sorry, behind the, there's that plaza down there, the old Raphael and Luigi's restaurant was at. I had to pull off there, and I had to pull behind that building, and it took me about 10 or 15 minutes to kind of compose myself, to get back out to be in the public eye. I mean, I had fucking snot running down my face and tears and all that, that sense of relief had hit that, like, okay, we got this baby justice.
Yeah.